All right.
We're in business. Woohoo! Welcome to Casual Chat Live. I am Brian Germain, and we have a really special guest. I am so honored to have you here, Norman. Norman Kent. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Brian. Thank you for asking me to be here. It's I'm not sure exactly what to expect, but I'm really ready to wing it, and I love doing this kind of stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
You're having fun over there.
I love this. It's so, I've said this many times before, but I'm fairly picky about who's on the show. And one of the things that I have as a criterion is people that I truly respect. And you're one of those people.
Thank you, Ryan.
For a lot of reasons.
Likewise.
For a lot of reasons. As an artist, I dare anybody to use a softer word. The work that you've done, just as a skydiving photographer within the industry, has taught all of us so much. You're inspired ideas of like how do we film this in a different way that's really high quality? How do we take this to the next level? And you're continuing to succeed in that. So
thank you very much. For me, it's just, I love what I do, and I've been in love with the sport and with photography for so many years now that, I love the acknowledgement. However, it's something I really do that's just fits, it really is what I do and what I am and who I am, so I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah. Well, what else are you going to do when you know who you are?
When I grow up.
Yeah, well, some say that it did, if you don't grow up by the time you're 40, it's too late.
Well, I guess there's no hope for me then.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm turning 50 on Tuesday.
Oh, great.
Yep. And I guess you just had a milestone too. You did
Absolutely.
bunch of jumps on your birthday. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really, really, really fun. I can't wait to share that with you, whether here or some other time.
Yeah, well, for sure. That was, so you did a lot of jumps in one day, right? I've always.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was quite interesting. Yeah. Awesome. I'll tell you about it. Where do we want to start though?
Well, anywhere at all. I think it's important always to give at least a little bit of background for my guests, just to, a lot of the viewers just entered the sport, a year or two ago, and they haven't gotten a chance to cross paths with some of the more amazing people that have essentially created the sport, and so, I can't even remember when I met you. It was a long time ago. And even then, where I remember we're riding to altitude, and I can't remember who it was. One of the goofy organizers, I think it was in Z Hills, kept pointing you out, goofing around, going, "That's Norm Kent. That's Norm Kent." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's really, he's here." And this was 25 years ago or more, and it's because of your presence, honestly. It's, you shoot great photos, you shoot unbelievable videos, and you've done some movie work that is just, astonishing. If people read the list of movies that you've shot, for the big world, it's dumbfounding, and it's awesome. So you've done, I was reading through the list. So what are some of the movies that you've shot the aerial stuff for that people would immediately?
Yeah, it's a long list, but I usually try to kind of go a little bit backwards on some of the ones that people remember the most.
Mm-hmm.
I did work for Get Smart, which was for me a really wonderful project. That's a whole conversation we can get into someday. I did work for a Grudge Match. I worked for Godzilla, mm-hmm. with Craig O'Brien. And I also worked for Kingsman, the Secret Service, also, mm-hmm. with Craig O'Brien. And Kingsman, the Secret Service was so much fun too. All of them are, each one has its own little stories. Of course, the Drop Zone, Terminal Velocity, Cutaway. And it's funny because Cutaway and Drop Zone are almost the same script, and it's really funny to see them, to see the two of them, and have worked on both of them. And I really enjoyed working on those because there were movies that had a lot of skydiving in them. And so that the job was long, and it's not only rewarding to be in a job that has more than just one little piece,
Yeah.
but it also, being longer, you have more of an opportunity to make an impact with the skydiving shots and so on. And like in Cutaway, I was responsible for the seam, which is, and 60% of all the movie, as far as, because there was so many aerial scenes, and it's the first movie and that I had my credit on the front of the screen. You know, you always have to wait 3 minutes or so after the movie ends, and then you see your name scroll.
Yeah.
And I've never been much about, you know, that, you know, like proof and all that is really more.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but to be in front of the movie and have this before, as the movie is starting with the first scene, to have your name pop up as a director of photography, it's like, yeah, here we are before the movie even started, and that's really a privilege. So I had a lot of fun with that. And some of these are measured as a film, like how good is the film, how much of a blockbuster it was, and how, you know, how much money it made or whatever. But I like to measure more as to how much people liked or didn't like my work in that film. You know, and like, for instance, in that film, regardless of how popular or not the film was, you know, I was really, really happy with my work in that film.
Yeah.
And, you know, so, and then there's other movies. There's other movies that, you know, I even worked on Jurassic Park 3, which was kind of a funny thing because there's no skydiving in Jurassic Park 3, but I still had you know, scene there. And it was really quite interesting because it was something that was footage that was selected of mine that I shot personally, and that was purchased through a stock footage agency. And sometimes that's a little more satisfying, believe it or not, because it's something where you go, okay, there's no politics here. It wasn't like who was who, buddies with who, and got the job.
Yep.
But truly, they went to all the houses and said, we like that stuff right there, you know, and then they picked that. It was actually a scene from that I had used and shot for the movie Willing to Fly, which is a different kind of movie. It's not so much the feature films, the commercial films and stuff like that, but it was more in-house film that I did. And it was a cloud scene flying through clouds. And they ended up putting it as a background for all these whatever the dinosaurs that fly are, you know,
pterosaurs.
Those there's so many different names, and so they use that as a background, and it was so cool. It's a whole different story in itself. So a lot of movies like that. I also worked on Navy SEALs, like I said, Terminal Velocity. You know, a lot of cool movies like that, and each one of them was unique. A lot of also smaller movies that are from other parts of the world. You know, German movies and movies in Mexico and other stuff. So lots of stuff. I've really had a privilege to do that.
Yeah, it is a privilege. Yeah, I mean, whenever I sort of have these moments where like, wow, I did something big, the only way I can digest it is just to be thankful.
Yeah.
And just say yes, and send me more, to the universe. Give me more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the important part is you really need to be, you really need to embrace how lucky you are when you're doing something like that, and sometimes, I mean, I can be negative like anybody else. I've actually had to learn to be positive. I used to be a lot more negative, believe it or not. And
I don't totally believe it.
One of those things where sometimes you're being negative and you kind of look back and go like, what the hell am I complaining about? Yeah. And somehow we still find a way to complain about one thing or another as human beings, because we all experience all the emotions like anybody else. No matter how much you have, you feel like you don't have enough or don't have anything or nobody loves you or whatever the case is. Yeah. And so it's really been important for me to really embrace how lucky I am, not only as a photographer, the luck I have achieving and capturing images, and also to be in these kind of movies and to be in the projects and to create stuff and to impact people's lives. It's totally a privilege because that is what I set out to do. I mean, when I started photography, the whole thing was motivated by capturing the beauty I see and sharing it with the world. So anytime I get an opportunity to do that, it's a privilege, it's a total privilege. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the kind of person that I want to work with on any project is somebody that is, sort of thankful and happy and easy to get along with. And I mean, not without struggles, because especially I find when you step up the need to get the shot right now,
right,
people get nervous and they get angry when they get nervous sometimes. But the ones that recover from that and remember why we're here, you know, that we would like to continue working together, and we'd like to continue these relationships.
Yes, yes. And I think it's one of those things where, again, I go through little times and things where you go like, oh, I wish I had this and I wish I had that. And then you see opportunity unfold right in front of your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes this really humbling, like, oh, wow, you know, and sometimes it's even in the space of thinking, oh, I missed this. And then right before your eyes, an opportunity presents itself and you go like, wow, you know, just in the space of thinking that I had missed something, you know, something else is there to be captured. And it's really unique. I did a little video, maybe I should show you that. I did a little video of a moment like that. Let me try to grab it here, flail on it. But, and also one of the things while I'm looking for that is, it's kind of funny because you and I are talking here and everything, but I know there's other people viewing, and I want to say hi. I didn't say hi to everybody because I can't see you, but I know you're there. Whoever's there, really, thank you for coming over and listening to Brian and I, and thank you, Brian, for the opportunity. So I think one of the things I need to have is a separate monitors with all the faces of whoever's you know, listening. That'd be really cool.
See your audience. You just have to use. Well, while you're digging up the thing from your hard drive, I just want to mention for those that are watching this live on Facebook, and I know there's a lot of you, you can interact if you want to ask questions or make comments. We won't see it on the Facebook feed, but if you notice on my page, on my Facebook page, and also on the events page, there's a link to download the Zoom software that we're using, and then you can join the session. It's a free download. It's quick and easy, and I haven't had anybody have trouble with that. And then you can join the session, and in the chat window, ask questions, or the question and answer section. There's both. You know, and I can already see that we have a few questions that are already up on the chat. I'm going to get Norman to take a look at, but I invite you all to join us. We're here for a little while, and then afterwards, when I stop recording and the heat is off a little bit, we can have other people join our discussion, and we'll be able to see your beautiful faces and talk amongst ourselves. So that'll be a blast. But,
cool.
But not too long, because I got to, you know.
Yeah, and that's great. I welcome questions, and you know, some of the questions may veer off from the subjects, and we might have to address them in future conversations and stuff. But you know, welcome to ask and stuff. Yeah. I think some of the themes that we talked about touching on was, you know, some of the older stuff and all that. Let me show you this. I think I have this video ready here. Let's see.
Let it rip.
You tell me how it's working on that end, because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It is.
I don't see it. Now I see your screen.
Now I see it. Okay.
Now I see the YouTube video.
This was called Moments Lived. Let me shut down some of the stuff here. And it's something that I experienced during one of the record attempts, or actually I was training. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Norman Kent. I often have the pleasure of living beautiful moments as I am searching for unique, creative shots. I want to share this one with you, which happened during the Vertical Record 2015 tryouts at Skydive Chicago. It was the last jump of the event. The sun was low. It looked like it was going to be a beautiful jump. I was primarily doing stills and video for debrief. I was asked to exit Superfloater. My exit would signal the trail plane to exit. While climbing out, I saw the position of the trail plane, and I thought, this would be an opportunity to create a unique shot. My aircraft had the base in it, which was to exit much later than me and the trail plane jumpers. I love the perspective of exiting above the trail plane and watch it go by as I fall past it and other jumpers exit at the same time. As I looked up at their exit,
wow,
I changed my framing several times for different composition of stills. I tend to be a little violent in my head movements when I do stills. The scene was beautiful. However, I did not feel that I composed the shot properly. I seemed to put the airplanes in the center early, leaving the left of the frame empty. The shot continued to present itself with beautiful clouds and the sun. It was gorgeous all the way around.
Wow.
As the jump ended, I thought to myself, I wish I had captured that motion with my red camera. The camera is the same I use for Hollywood motion pictures and commercials. Moments like these deserve to be captured with this kind of special quality. All I could think of was the shot I did not capture on the high quality as it deserves. But I've been there before. It's a familiar feeling and I'm okay with it. Quite often I don't capture a shot, and I have to remember that these magical moments are still ones that I experienced, even if they were not captured on film.
Yep.
We landed and celebrated the end of the day and the camp. As I walked into the hangar, I heard several people scream, "Let's go again!" Everyone chimed in agreement, "Yes!" I was super excited. I could not believe we had the time, but we got on a 20-minute call. I thought to myself, is there time to swap cameras and mount the red camera on the helmet and do all the prep associated with it before going? I have to make it work. I focused on getting the camera ready, and as I was doing so, I went over the shot in my mind. What an opportunity to capture a moment lost, or should I say, not lost? What a magical feeling. I looked at everyone who was facing me, then looked outside. I could feel this would be a wonderful experience. I waited for Rook to nod his head, which was the signal for me to go. I let go of the airplane, and just as I suspected, the perspective was beautiful, just like I imagined it. I kept the aircraft on the left side of the frame and let the jumpers exit the right side of my frame. I left just enough space on the left to allow the other aircraft to come in. I slid to the right, so jumpers would come in the foreground, and now my scene was perfectly centered, with beautiful clouds behind it.
Wow.
The clouds filled my frame so beautifully. The clouds were changing color as we were descending, and I could see the sun in the horizon. I rolled over and saw everyone going towards the formation. It just seemed like such a perfect scene. I managed to block the sun with the formation just momentarily, just enough to give it a glimpse.
That is fantastic, Norman.
Thank you, man.
Really awe-inspiring.
The clouds were so beautiful in the background. The whole skydive just seemed so magical. I think the most important thing here was not only that I kept the vision alive, but I also want to remember always that even if I had not captured it with the red camera, this was a beautiful experience to live and to be present for. Captured or not, it is these experiences that make me a lucky man.
Wow! Right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the reason I wanted to share that is because we were talking about, acknowledging and embracing the moments and embracing how lucky we are and all that. And that was just such a wild experience, thinking about, oh man, this could be like this, could be like that. And all of a sudden, because often you just come down and everybody's like, they don't want to jump again. And I'm subject to all these set of circumstances in the sport, whether people are going to make another jump or not, or whether, in records, it's always like, well, it's getting to be sunset, so we don't want to do it because the pilots can't see. And I'm like, oh, it's the most beautiful time of the day. And things like that just don't work themselves out all the time. So when they do, it's really kind of like a real magical experience for me, because I get to really play and to be able to go, oh, this is what I could do better if I could only have another chance, and then to have that chance unfold was really, really cool. And you know, there's a lot of things like that, but I think it's in the space of acknowledge and embrace what you know, the opportunities that come, and also what you get and what you make, you know, what you create. So.
The word that's coming to me as well as I watch that whole thing is uncertainty. The comfort with, you know, I'm standing in this ready place to try to do my best to get the shot, and it's uncomfortable, because if you fail when you're trying your hardest, that hurts worse than if you're doing it half-assed, isn't it? Right? And you were all in, right, with that one. And the first one, like you said, you know, maybe you moved your head around more than you wanted to in the initial because you were trying to get a still shot, but you learned. And that's the lesson I feel like needs to be passed on to every skydiver, is that there is no imperfection. There's just the process of perfection.
Yes, and not only that, but I think one of the important things here, I want to share something with you, which is a long time ago, I used to really have trouble with my work as far as not liking it. And the reason is I would visualize in my head what I wanted, and I would think of these ideas and what I wanted to do. And then I would go and try to capture it, and I was not capturing what I visualized, and I was feeling like my visions were not accurate, and I was feeling like a little bit like unaccomplished and failure and all that. And then I remember it was funny because it was at the time of slides, and I used to throw the stuff away, and I caught people grabbing my stuff from the garbage. So I started cutting the stuff, like destroying it and throwing it away, because I didn't want anybody to see it. And then one time I actually, you know, went like, oh, looked at some stuff and went like, crap, and I just put it aside, you know, and I didn't destroy it and I didn't throw it away. And it sat there for like a month. And then I came back one day, you know, to that area or whatever, was cleaning up or something, and I went like, what's this, you know? And I started looking at it, and it was really great stuff. Yep. It was just not what I had expected, so I disqualified it. Yes. And didn't learn to really embrace that that, you know, I learned at that point, and it took me a while to learn it, but I learned at that point that sometimes your visions, your ideas, your actions, and whatever makes you be in action to execute something is only the vehicle to discover what's really there. Yes. Because you may not even be imagining what's really there. And in this particular video, one of the examples of that was that I would have not done that shot normally. Yep. And Rook said, hey, I need you to go floater to signal the other plane. And I'm going like, well, there goes my shot. And I'm going, all I have is an empty airplane in front of me, which is the airplane I was exiting from, and which I would have normally shot. Yeah. I thought, okay, so I gotta, you know, look at him and then kind of go out the other airplane. And in this execution is when I went like, this is a pretty cool angle. Why didn't I think of this before? So something that worked against me was really an open door, kind of like somebody tapping you on the shoulder, going like, hey, look over there. You're missing over there. You're thinking about this over here. You're missing over there. Yeah. So when I had that chance to look at it and then go, oh man, if I only had another chance to now, with this knowledge I have in this trial run and all that, and all the elements that were there that were going to be repeated, because everything was going to work exactly the same way, from Rook signaling me to all that. And so if I could just take a shot at that, and that's what it worked out. So it's really a clear example on, you know, sometimes what you plan is not what you get. And sometimes planning is simply the vehicle for what lies behind that you may not even be capable of imagining just yet. Yeah. And that's why I made that little video, because that was a reminder for that. And not only to inspire others, but also to remind myself that I feel that way. Because, you know, a lot of times it's kind of like you're saying something to somebody else and you go like, wow, I should be listening to my own words. You know, and then you learn from your own lessons, you know. So. Absolutely. And that's why I do this, as, you know, this is a hot kitchen that we're cooking in, right? This is live. Lots of people are watching it, and we know that. And it's completely unscripted, and we just let it rip. And it's amazing the level of insight and wisdom that I get
in these kinds of conversations. And granted, I'm picking the right people, right? I'm picking, people that are just inherently inspiring because they choose to walk an inspired path, a dangerous path, right? I mean, it's not just the skydivers that I respect, but people that reach for something that is a little risky, that's in this gray zone is what I call it, where you're not certain that you can do it. If it was completely certain, it wouldn't be as interesting. Mm-hmm. And how you meet with that risk can result in either an epic fail or bam, this moment of awesomeness.
Yeah. But I think until you put yourself out there, you just can't really progress. I guess it's just one of those things that you have to overcome, and there's a lot of fear involved. Usually it's the fear of looking bad or failure. And that sometimes stops us. It stops us from from actually going for it. It's like, wow, no, what if I look bad, or something. Totally. And like, for instance, I mean, some of the time I'll share maybe video or not. But one of the things in that area for me is like the wind tunnel. Yeah. Wind tunnel, people are doing amazing things in there. And with the amount of years in the sport I have and the amount of jumps I have, I think people assume, and the amount of hours I have in the tunnel, I think people assume, wow, this guy must be a really amazing flyer. And my flying is very different. It's very camera driven and all that. And I really suck in that thing, in that tunnel. It's just really horrible. So and I have a problem with looking bad, which is even worse because, if I look bad and I have a problem with looking bad, that's really hard to go train like that. Yeah. So one of the things I had to set my mind to was, wait a minute, I'm going to go train. And in fact, Paraclete sponsors me and Paraclete XP. And one of the things that I wanted to do for them, to do right, is like, okay, what is it that you can give others as far as your experience on training and flying? And you're certainly not going to fly like the people that are flying in there that have more hours and they're, younger and all that. And they're just really gung-ho. And so then I started thinking, what's unique about my journey in the tunnel, as far as for me, I guess what the hardest thing is that I have a problem looking bad, and that I know I'm going to look bad, and that needs training. I need training in looking bad, making it okay, and not letting it stop me. Yeah. So then I started going into the tunnel with that attitude, the attitude of go in there and look bad. And then it gets even more challenging when somebody runs into you and goes, oh, wow, cool. I can't believe I met you or something. And then what are you doing here? I'm training. Oh, I can't wait to see you fly. And then it's like, oh no, I want to train by myself. But it's embracing that. It also opens the door to really learning, because it's more than flying that we need to learn. That is a part of it for my training, at least. So it's the own little things like that each one of us has as a human being that we need to train for. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure why we went in that direction, but
well, it is. Well, I mean, one of my key topics that is important to me is this place of fear, this place of gray zone, uncertainty, and it's not just physical risks that spike our adrenaline, that spike our fear. To me, a big part of it is just my ego, which is this illusory thing. To me, it doesn't even exist. Defending some, pride, right? Pride gets us in so much trouble.
Yeah.
And
mainly because it takes us away from authenticity,
Yeah, it does. And it takes us away from these learning moments where we actually try, we hang ourselves out there and we flunk our way into perfection, and it might take a while.
Yeah. One of the things I remember, I know I'm bouncing off of the subjects and stuff, but the story I wanted to share is that the movie Willing to Fly that I created, I did from Wings Can Fly, and I did other films, and from Wings Can Fly was the one that really changed.
Talk about.
And we can talk about that. But Willing to Fly in particular, one of the things that I remember is I created the title, and the working title was Learning to Fly. And the idea was the concept we were just talking about. It was something where I was going, I want something that's super open-minded. and learning to fly to me was something like, okay, we are always learning, no matter what experience experience level you have. There's always something to learn. If you can remain humble, always learning, meaning open-minded.
Yes.
And I was talking to somebody, we were actually talking, sort of toying around with a medium and helping us out with, what we were doing in the direction we were going. And at one point, she stopped. I was so excited about the title and all that. And then she stops and says, I'm kind of getting a message for you that, that's really not an open-minded title. And I'm like, what do you mean? It can't be any more open-minded than wanting to continue to learn, Yeah. And then she just floored me with something. Her name is Sarah Ryan. She floored me with something, which was, she said, well, learning is a concept that comes from the assumption that you already are not perfect and already know how, that you don't already know how. Mm-hmm. And really the question is, are you willing to allow yourself to be this flying thing or whatever it is you want to be in this movie? If you really want to be open-minded, the question is not about the learning, but to acknowledge and embrace that you are already perfect. Yeah. You just need to allow yourself to be this perfect human being. Mm-hmm. And it was like, wow, it was just so much superior than what I had thought of, and it was so fitting. So we changed the title from Learning to Fly to Willing to Fly for that reason. It was really, it had a lot of meaning for me, and I thought that would be a much better message, which was like, hey, we already know how to do this. The question is, can we get out of ourselves, out of our way, which is what you were talking about and what we were talking about in the tunnel. Can we get our egos and all that out of the way and let the purity of just being be present? And that's how that movie's title came to be.
Perfect. I mean, Willing to Fly was masterful. I mean, really, really beautiful stuff. And you came at it at an angle photographically that was distinct, that really was an opening, for new possibilities. But a lot of us that watched that went, whoa, I feel this emotional charge where I want to go jump. Everything you've ever done makes me want to get in an airplane right now and go jump out of it, which is, that's, I would imagine it's a good sign.
Yes. It's interesting because I get so submerged into the projects that I lose track of this. I just go all with my heart, and just go but I don't, especially on the mechanics of it, the I guess the technology of it. You have to know every shot and every frame and how it plays out and where it works and where it fits best. And so you can instantly go like, oh, this works here, or this works there, or this is how I designed it. Or the principle we talked about earlier, which is, this is not what I got, but look at where I got and look where it fits. Mm-hmm. And then when people say, did you plan for that shot to be there? It's like, I planned for that, for a shot that discovered this shot, which gave me a solution exactly for this little hole I have in the movie. Right. But in working, in working with that, it just seemed like it was the whole thing is really amazing as far as working with that. And From Wings Came Flight was a film that we did. But what I was getting at with it is, when we started doing From Wings Came Flight, the people that are new in the sport or probably don't even know the film or whatever, but it really revolutionized the sport in so many ways. And when we finished, and we can talk about the film and I can show you some clips of it, but when we did that and we finished editing it, there was supposed to be a premiere for the film for a big boogie in Florida, in Zephyr Hills, and we couldn't finish the film on time. We just were working day and night and just couldn't finish. And so I thought, okay, and I had been asked to do a premiere in Canada, but I thought, okay, the first premiere needs to be here, and where I wanted to do it in the U.S. But because we weren't ready, the premiere in Canada became the real premiere, the first time it was shown in public. Mm-hmm. And it was like 100 or 200 people showed up. They were not, it was winter, there wasn't a lot of skydiving, and this was sort of their skydiving event kind of thing, auction and all kinds of stuff of prints and other items, and it was a charity thing, and so there I remember being ready for the show and going, what if they hate it? You know, it's like, I don't even know if this is any good.
Yeah.
Because you get so involved in it, and you see it so many hundreds of times that you kind of lose track. It's like, wow, I mean, I don't even know if it's good anymore, because you don't have the outside perspective, you know.
Right.
And so then this was something that you know, we were really nervous about, and it was a huge success. And
of course,
you know, I think that there were several things you know, that really played a huge role. But you know, I mean, the whole concept of the film was just wonderful. And I don't know, if you want me to show you a little piece.
Oh, yeah, I would love. Yeah, while you dig that up, I mean, just a little bit of background on this movie. This is one of the films that showed the skydiving community that was stuck doing four-way, you know, turning 5 points from 8,500 feet, you know, in ugly, you know, bounce and blend gear or whatever. That first of all, if you add color to this sport, it really takes it to the level. If you add a background to this sport, you know, where you're jumping over beautiful places, there's this whole other level. And if you add imagination to the sport in terms of the organizing, and I mean, the stuff that you were doing with, this was the birth of free flying, in my opinion.
I think
Indiana.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It really was. I mean, people call, you know, Olav or Tony or even me, which I won't buy as the founding fathers. No way. And the truth is, I would say that probably people were doing crazy stuff before you were, but you guys really refined it.
Yeah, I think what happened there was, why don't we do, let me show you a piece. What I'm going to do is, you know, because it can be long. I mean, we could be watching long. I think maybe what I can do is, can you hear me when the movie is playing?
Perfectly.
So I can lower the volume a little bit, and I can talk over it.
And then
that way it doesn't make such a long piece and so on.
Yeah,
so
you can jump around.
I'm going to show you the beginning of the film, and it's just kind of has a little bit of a, you know, artistic beginning, and it goes to belly flying. And you got to remember, now this is a really important quiz, or not quiz, what do you call it? My language, my Spanish and English get crossed in my head sometimes. Trivia, little piece of trivia here, which is that this year is the 30th anniversary from Wings Can't Fly. So, you know, so we have about a little under a year, like towards the end of the year is when it is. So,
wow.
And so so when you're looking at this, you have to remember that this is, you know, that this is, let's see.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. So here we go, and I'll talk a little bit through it.
And your volume is on there, but yeah, I remember this beginning. It was cute.
And you want my volume up?
Yeah. So well, I mean, if you bring the volume down on the piece, but honestly, when it switches to the skydiving, I don't mind that song being loud, because that I still hear it in my head.
Does it sound too loud right now?
No. Can't hear it really.
Oh, not better.
A song of love and music.
Okay.
As Mother Nature sings. In the eye of the wind, the cradle screams hard. To kiss your face good morning. To forge a brand new start.
I think what I was trying to do here, I'll just talk a little bit over it. I was trying to, you know, kind of do a little bit of intensity of our sport, and you know, kind of what goes through your head as you're preparing, and you know, it's a little bit more intense than maybe people feel as when they're jumping. But to me, it was very important to portray this part, with this kind of level of this feel as an introduction, and the other thing that's worth mentioning is that From Wings Came Flight is sort of a continuation of, or inspired by the movie Wings, and that's why the title is From Wings Came Flight. From the movie Wings came Flight,
which was wonderful. I love that movie.
And then Willing to Fly was, which we saw, you know, we saw a little piece. We're going to see some pieces. It's also the continuation of that. So From Wings Came Flight, and then now Willing to Fly was after that. You know, so
yeah, all sort of connected. Yeah, I love how this is slow. It's one of the safety things that I keep trying to repeat to people is prepare slowly.
People always ask me about that. They always tell me that this is what they think in their heads. Let me just get that's the beginning again.
Every time the door opens. Yeah, I'm gonna shut up.
With a vision in my head, my body screams releasing. My dreams, they must be fed. I rise to this tempo where the mortals fear to tread. Where peace becomes simplicity, it goes where nature's led. I'm standing on the edge with a vision in my head. My body screams releasing. My dreams, they must be fed. I rise to the tempo where mortals fear to tread. Where peace becomes simplicity, it goes where nature's led. If you follow in your feeling, then the wind will do your healing and hold you in around the soft at night.
I'll lower it here for a second so I can talk.
Please.
One of the things that's interesting about this is, I mean, you got to remember that the skydiving is really pretty good, and this color is what you said, what you were saying. I was really adamant about that. You can see it's all color coordinated. All the reds are in one place, all the blues are in one place. You know, they're all symmetrically placed. All this was by design.
Yeah.
And this was one of the things we were exploring. And also, these guys were all people that used to compete against each other, national champions, world champions, teams, you know, 4-way and 8-way teams that got together to create this level. I mean, this is still the kind of skydiving that, you know, you can't show up at a drop zone and say we're going to do a 20-way, you know, whatever, however many points, you know, just even 30 years later, you know, it takes, it's not quite that simple, you know, so it's really unique that it was that good of a skydiving, especially for the time. And the colors, of course, were, you know, like you said, very, very important. And I was so adamant about that. And I was really so intense about that. I had complete control and direction of the whole thing, so I could portray it this way, you know. But this is so, like, the quality and everything is so 30 years ago, you know, so 80s. So it's so funny. Now, if you look at this piece, for instance, here, you can see the color coordination. There's the 4 stars are equal as far as the color setup, and then when they spin, the greens are in the center, the reds are in the center, the blues are in the center. They're not just spinning in you know, they're synchronized, all the colors, for the purpose of you know, creating that beauty and that perfection as far as that was concerned. And then, you know, they turned back into a round, and it just was like, it was just so well executed by these guys, you know, and it was so fun to design all of this, you know. You see that the yellows track first, and then, you know, each color goes at their own time. So anyway, that's sort of the beginning of the film, and then we go from there, you know, to other things. And even here, how it was fogging, the film was fogging just because of the altitude, and it was just let me get out of here and go back. It was just a perfect opportunity to end the scene, you know, the way it was fogging. And you can see one of the things that I did on the film, you can see there's a lot of editing.
Yeah.
But sometimes, in some cases, in some of the pieces, I was thinking, you know, I think I want people to see what was actually accomplished in a jump. So I remember doing one of the jumps where there was no other angles, no other cuts. It was just like the whole one. So you could really see how much skydiving was going on, how many points were really being done, instead of okay, we'll pick it up on the next one and cheating on the edit or something like that, which we did some of too, not for cheating purposes, but because part of the technique was to do multiple angles. Yep. And to be able to show, hey, it looks like this from here, and it was just, you know, the filmmaker, you know, coming alive, let's say, trying to do that. Yep. And so anyway, I don't know if you have any comments on that, or I don't know if people are also have questions, or if they've been asking questions and we've been ignoring them.
Q&A, we do have. If you pull up the Q&A, so Rock was saying. Did you both coordinate the sideburn styles for the webcast? No kidding. No.
Oh, look at that.
Because cool guys have sideburns. No.
I didn't even realize on that.
Skydivers will bust your balls. That's the way.
Yeah, they will, yeah.
If you don't have a thick skin.
No, we didn't, but you know what? We'll be more careful to coordinate stuff like that.
Yeah, next time we'll do something different. Like a goatee or whatever. All right.
Next question.
So he did say, so Norm, love your work. My favorite wall art is at home, is 2 of your framed and signed photographs. How cool is that? And his name is Rock T. I've had them up for about 20 years. Every guest that comes over asks about them with admiration. So his question is, you probably get asked this a lot, but how do you manage the intense equipment load on your head on opening, and how do you avoid line snags? Or have you had a frightening line snag before? This is a great question.
Okay, yeah, it's a fair question. There's several things. First of all, the whole thing was a gradual thing. I consider myself to be a bit of an inventor, besides a photographer, and I say that not because I'm claiming certain inventions, although I have done a few, or at least come up with the ideas for them, but mainly because what I mean by that is that I like figuring things out. I like sorting things out and experimenting with things, you know, creating my helmets, and I designed the wings on my helmet, on my jumpsuit, and my entire jumpsuit. You know, it's manufactured by Liquid Sky, but it is designed by me. And everything has its function. And where I'm going with this is that a long time ago, I had this idea that I wanted to jump with a full face helmet. And there was only one person I had seen jumping with a full face helmet. It was not a cameraman. It was Steve Fielding in Elsinore jumping with a motorcycle helmet. And this is back, I'm talking about the mid-70s. And so I wanted to do the same for camera. And I arranged my cameras with this helmet. And I decided to do that, and it became such a look thing and so counterproductive because it was awful. The helmet was very loose on my head. The visibility was lost because it was, it was such like a tunnel vision. And a regular motorcycle helmet has distance between the chin and the front part. So I lost my peripheral vision down, which is very important because when you're working with the camera, you're focusing and you're centering your camera wherever your center is that you want to put it, your composition, but things are happening all around you and you want to be able to see them. And when you have this thing underneath, you can't see them. So the whole thing was a disaster. Yeah. And from that disaster came an idea, which was, hey, what do I do? How do I fix this? And whatever. I thought, okay, well, why don't I cut a piece of the chin out, get rid of the padding, cut a piece of the chin out, a couple inches from each side, and then bring it in. Well, in doing so, what happened was that the wider part of the helmet, by missing those 2 inches, didn't match the front part of the helmet anymore because it was coming at such an angle that this was narrower, and it needed the other pieces to keep going wider to match the other two. So I was going like, oh, I just ruined my helmet. And I was spending all my money on this kind of stuff, so I just cut up a helmet and ruining it. And of course, it wasn't that expensive, but I was broke, So then, all of a sudden, once again, from a mistake and from an error, came a solution, which was, okay, what if I fix it? And I went, how do you fix it? Well, you're not going to put the stuff back on, and then you end up with the same problem again. So instead, what I did is I squeezed the wider parts in to make the front part match, and now I had the visit, and then I cut the front of it like this, so I could see what you could put your finger and see where the visibility is looking down, and so I cut it all up so it didn't cut my visibility,
Yeah.
And somehow, voila, which is where I'm going out with the helmet and how this managing of the equipment happened. All of a sudden, the added support and control of the helmet versus a chin cup or chin strap, which is what we had before, which has a hinging point at the attachment point. So there's a lot of play.
Right.
So when you deploy or when you try to do things, you have this play, and play means a whiplash at the end of it, whipping effect, just a lash at the end. So this gave me control, and all of a sudden everything felt lighter and easier to control and safer. And of course that meant I can take more stuff up. So I started adding more weight, and it became this thing of the better the helmet fit, the safer I could be, and the more I could control. So the short answer to the long story that I just told you is that a lot of it is designing the technology that keeps you in control of the equipment, so you don't let it get away from you, so you don't let it go and get momentum. That's one of the things. And another thing I had to develop is a technique in deployment. And I always, when I teach this, one of the things I use as an analogy is, every time I go to Europe, and one of the things you do when you go anywhere, you kind of go, okay, I got to go shopping, supermarket, if you're in a boogie or wherever, you go to the supermarket and stock up on what? Beer, or things like that are heavy. And so you got your little car all stocked up. And it's funny because you're I don't know how else to illustrate it other than to walk it, but when you're pushing the cart like a chair, and it has momentum and you want to make it turn there, you can't just turn it like a cart in the US because all wheels turn.
Yes.
So you have to get around it to make it this way. So you constantly, if you're pushing this way, you want to go that way, you can't just turn. It has momentum going that way. So you want to get around it and turn it. So the same principle happens with the helmet, which is it has its own life. It has its own inertia. It wants to go. So therefore, I had to learn to dance with it. If I wanted to change direction, I have to get ahead of it and change its course gently or rapidly, whatever the move is, rather than fighting with it. And the same thing happens in the deployment. I learned with that technique, the dancing, that, if I just kind of lead it and we dance together, at the end of the jump, I basically need to get underneath the helmet to stop it and get my spine aligned with it. It's not just a simple deployment. It's not something I want to say, this is not a course. I'm not trying to say, hey, just do that, because you can get in all kinds of trouble if you don't have the right moves to do that. You can, but it's literally almost a beginning of a backflip, back loop as you deploy to allow your spine to get aligned. So you're basically getting under the helmet as you're deploying. And there's a lot of other techniques and a lot of things like that. People ask me, do you grab your helmet when you deploy? Right. I don't, because what people don't understand is people think that when you deploy, you're done jumping, you're done skydiving, and you're not. It's just a pilot chute going out, and there's a time there where you're still in free fall, and even through line twists, you're still flying. You can have line twists, your bag could be above you, and you can avoid a canopy coming at you. You can still fly to the side. Your lines would just kind of get a little sideways, and you can avoid even maybe just a few inches, but that sometimes is all it takes to survive. Yep. And so when you're not jumping, it's just like when you jump out of the airplane, you don't jump and then go, where's everybody? And then you start skydiving. You're skydiving inches from the airplane. And the same thing goes for this. You don't stop skydiving just because you deploy. The same as you don't flare your parachute and stop flying. It's not a canopy descent all at once. It's 100% canopy flight, and then it translates to 99% and 1% support from the ground, and then 98.2, 97.3, and so on and so forth, and you gradually transfer the weight. When you think of it that way, you get to really get the technique to be able to survive something like that. And for me, I think along with that question, one that usually comes, so I'm kind of guessing that you might have this question too, is why the hell do you even carry all that weight when the GoPros are here and all that stuff? And really, the only way to explain that is that yeah, they're here, and I don't even own one. But the real issue is I'm really passionate about photography and capturing the beauty as that I see, like I said before, and I am a quality junkie, and so what happens is a little camera, a big camera that was, you know, a $500,000 camera for television or whatever that was, you know, 100 pounds earlier was better than a little camera perhaps. And then now a GoPro is way better than that big camera. So there's no need to have the big camera. But here's one thing that's important. The big camera is always going to be better than the little camera. So just like the GoPros and the little cameras got smaller and better, the big cameras also get better and better and better. So when you take the bigger camera, which I fly a red weapon, it's called Red Weapon with a Dragon sensor, and that camera is much better than anything else that you can do, especially, and there's other things too that make it so, you know, the interchangeable lenses and other features and slow motion. And that's why in that video I showed you, I was adamant about, oh, if I could only shoot it with that camera. And I think you could tell the flavor between the one shot, the first one, and then the second one, besides my execution. So that's the reason why, you know, and why and how I haven't gotten injured, I don't know. My doctors are really intrigued by that too. Every time I come in and have an injury or something hurts or whatever, they look at everything, and the only thing that doesn't hurt is my neck. And I don't know why. I don't know. I mean, I broke my back once. I had a canopy collapse. I was the first Nova injury back in the 200-way record. And my canopy collapsed at about 50 feet and dropped me. And I busted a knee, broke my back, broke a couple of vertebrae, and my neck like didn't have a problem. You know, it's like somehow I've been lucky with that. And I'd have to say a lot of is you know, created luck through technique and through understanding the physics of what I'm dealing with. And it's like I have a relationship with my helmet. I know sometimes it's funny because my helmet, especially when it used to weigh 32 pounds, I've worn it up to 32 pounds. I try to avoid it because, you know, it's not productive because you're carrying such an anchor. But when I used to have the big helmet, it was assembled, and I used to sometimes walk by it, and if I didn't jump it for a couple of weeks, I kind of look at it and go like, really? Like I do that? I put that thing on my head and I talk to it like we have this relationship, and I'd always imagine it telling me, hey, you know, like I don't even remember you anymore. You know, I miss you. And I always thought, you know, if I don't talk to it and if I don't have this relationship with it, it can hurt me, you know. And I always have this thing that I do, which is I talk to my helmet, you know, and it's kind of like I treat it as a being rather than a machine. And that's when I dance with this machine, you know, but it is a being.
Yeah.
Me.
Well, that's I think that's adorable. I mean, think back historically, there was a creature that lived that had the biggest, heaviest head in history. I don't know if you know this one, and we don't know if they had neck problems or not, but the Triceratops, right, had this massive head. But I think if you live with it, you know, like the Triceratops did, you don't jump a heavy camera helmet once a month or once a year. You do it all the time. So you're current with it. And, you know, your muscle strength, I'm sure, is strong enough that it can bear it. But like you say, you choose the right parachute as well.
Oh, yeah. The parachute makes a big difference. Right. And also, you know, like I said, the technique and all that is a huge thing, you know. So all of these things, you know, play a key role on everything, you know. It's all part of loving what you do and going for whatever you have to do to get it. You know what's funny though about this is in the weight, in learning how to handle the weight and everything, one of the things I earned a reputation at the time, and if this is at a time when there was no video and video stabilization and all that, of having a really, really steady shot. And the reason was because of the weight. Because when you have a really light helmet, you have to push it through the air. So like when you see like you take an inflatable in free fall, what does it do when you let go of it? It goes, well, it doesn't go up, but in relation to you, it goes up because it wants to float, because it has too much drag and not enough mass. So a light helmet, especially when people start putting all these covers and stuff, and that's what we used to do, and all the stuff, you got to push it, you got to force it. Where if you have this thing that already wants to go, it just wants your input to guide it. And so that was one of the things I learned, is that it was much more comfortable. Of course, you got to then deal with it at the end of the jump, but it was a much better shot if you could manage this weight. In fact, there was a time when I used to add lead to my helmet. In fact, the new helmet I'm working on is on the heavy side without even any cameras for that reason, but the weight is all distributed around the bottom, and it creates it's not out there where it has a chance to get momentum and get away from you. And this mass allows you for a more steady helmet, you know, and more steady shot. And so I remember putting bars of lead on the helmet on either side of the camera, just for the mass. When you only wear one camera, it's like there's not enough mass, so I would add lead to it.
Me too. I did the same thing. But if you remember the PC7, PC10 days, PC9s, I like my 9, but it's on one side of the head, and everybody had that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. So I put lead on the other side to balance the helmet low in the same place. I got some of my best work done with that helmet, and I never got hurt on it, and I was test jumping the whole time.
The weight was low too.
Yep. Yep. And it was, I still have it. I still jump it sometimes. I never even needed a chin cup as long as I wasn't putting anything on the top. So
I hope that answers that question.
It does. Well, the other one the other aspect of that I want to make sure you also address is the safety stuff of, you know, bridle wrapped around your helmet, or, you know, toggles. I mean, toggles come out of riser keeper sometimes when you're in free fall. Do you have, you know, some sort of a quick eject, or are you just all in?
Yeah. I have a cutaway system, and believe in them. You never know what can happen, and so I'm ready for it. I'm designing a new helmet now, and I'm not so happy with what I have now. And one of the things from the cutaway system that I believe is that, you know, most of the cutaway systems are things you don't use.
Yep. Because
you rarely have the situation. Hopefully never. So here's what happens is you're going to have an emergency, and now you have to remember what's the procedure.
Yeah.
So for instance, I'll give you an example. In a car, in an automobile, every time you drive, you put on a seatbelt, or hopefully you put on a seatbelt. You put on a seatbelt, and then when you get out of the car, you take the seatbelt off. The procedure for on and off is always the same. So if you have an emergency and need to leave the vehicle, your muscle and memory is already in place for getting out of the seatbelt, because you do it every time you get in and out of the car. So a cutaway system ideally would be something that's not a handle somewhere hidden that you never used before, but more something that it's like, okay, I get out the same way as I get out every time I land. I get out of my helmet, and then I get into the helmet the same way when I get in. So that's one of the things I'm trying to change on my helmet design, just so it is that's the cutaway system rather than a handle or something like that.
I think that's wise.
You know, so that's part of it. You know, there, as far as the I don't want to get into that subject because we can drift in that direction, and it can be a whole, you know, hour of that. But what I do want to do is recommend that you guys watch, if you haven't already, my video that's in YouTube. It's called Dangers of Being a Hero, and it's all related to the snagging and all that, and all the you know, the dangers of wearing a camera, even if it's a GoPro. And again, the mentality of it is more not so much that it's the GoPro is dangerous. It's more that our attitude when we jump a GoPro is it's nothing. It's just a GoPro. Therefore, it's not dangerous. It's not going to hurt me. It doesn't. It's not. And that attitude is what gets you in trouble.
Absolutely.
No, it's a hook. It doesn't matter if it's little. Exactly. It's a hook. All it takes is one line in the wrong place, and now you're there, or it yanks your head and breaks your neck, or something. Things happen, and they have happened. There's examples of it there. Go take a look at it, and then maybe some other day we can explore that some more. And
I do want to point out just quickly, one of the things that I've added on my helmet, and this is on all my helmets, is something that allows you to quick eject the Fast X buckle if that is in fact keeping you in. So I've got a backup to my normal procedure.
Yeah.
This one has another option. If I do get things hooked in there, I just have to pull this handle, and the whole thing comes off. Oops.
Right.
So now I get to keep my helmet in my head.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great. And again, there's so many things to explore. And the main thing is be proactive about it. Don't be, don't be just like I don't care kind of attitude. It's just a GoPro. That's usually what gets you hurt.
Yep.
That's the best advice I can give you there. So where do we want to go from here? You want to continue with wings team flight a little bit?
Well, we can. And do you have a minute to put some of the stuff that the free flying stuff
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show is maybe.
It changed my life,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Okay.
Honestly, because I mean, I started in 1986,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which was, I mean,
I'm going to look for it while you talk.
yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, back then, we had flat flying and we had style and we had accuracy, right? Of course, now we say style is how you walk to the plane, accuracy is getting in the right one, right? Those things are of the past, but there was something constraining about simple RW or FS or whatever you want to call that. And early on, I mean, right from the get-go, I wanted to do weird stuff. I wanted to, we like grab each other's ankles and do a stand-up or whatever. But I mean, literally, I was messing around with stand-ups because of watching Mike Michigan. I was doing stand-ups when I was still on a belly mount reserve, like, I mean, before I should have been.
Yeah, that's funny.
And it was because of this this passion-driven pursuit that I'm sure you didn't make $1 billion on, but you changed the sport. You changed the sport. You changed history.
Thank you. I pride myself of that, and of course, it wasn't the intention at the time. We were just trying to make a cool film because I love making films. But years later, like I said, 30 years later, to see what it did, and I get everywhere I go, I get stopped by people that tell me how they were, they were their lives were changed, just like you said, or they came back to the sport because of it, or they grew up watching this film, that their parents wore out the VHS tape and all that, and so it's really it's really rewarding to know that we did that. And I think the main thing that's really important for people to understand here is that the reason was that we kind of blew the door out of from the belly flying world, and the only thing that was three-dimensional was style.
Yep.
And in style was more of throwing a maneuver, sort of racing the clock, throwing a back loop in a turn, and stuff like that. But there was really no flying or staying in between any of those poses. You had to land back on your belly. And this was more of an artistic thing. So my wife Diana, which is one of the, her and Mike Michigan were the ones that thought about this independently, which was interesting because she was thinking about it on her own. What she was thinking about is dancing in the air, dancing in the clouds, and just feeling free and dancing. And Mike Michigan was more of a gymnastic style, just really flying the maneuvers in a gymnastic form, layouts and stuff like that. And Diana was more about dancing, and so when we introduced this through this film, people were floored. And I know because that premiere that I told you about is where people were just like, they dropped their jaws. Besides the skydiving they had seen and all the other stuff, at the end we hit them with the freestyle, and they were just floored because they never realized that anything like that was possible. And when you look at it, you got to remember this is 30 years ago, before anybody had seen anything other than belly flying. So even though the stuff is really simple compared to today's flying, it was that time. You have to transport yourself 30 years from now and realize that this is what happened then, and it changed people's lives. And I'm really proud and privileged to have been a part of it through Diana. And I got to share this little story before I start. Is that when Diana first told me about this, is I want to do this, and I want to fly and dance in the sky, and I'm going to do a sit like here, and I'm going to stand up like that. And what I said was, just forget about it. It's really a bad idea. And she said, why? Why? And I kind of burst her bubble, and I was such a closed mind. It's almost embarrassing, but like I said earlier, part of my training is to look bad by owning up to all the stupid things that I've ever said and things like that. And what I did was I said, because I'll never be able to shoot it because, I'm on my belly, and, how am I going to be able to shoot that? Because you're going to be all over the place. And she says, well, I guess I'll do it without you shooting it then, without anybody shooting it, because she just purely wanted to dance. She didn't care. The filming was my thing. I cared about the filming. Yeah. She could care less, And then I realized when I said that, and when she said that, it was like, oh my God, what a closed-minded thing I just said. It's like, stop, because I can't keep up with you. You got to stop. That was so embarrassing. And then I realized that moment is like, no, what I have to do is learn to keep up with her, figure out a way to keep up. And when you see, I'll show you a little piece after this one. I'll show you a piece of her and I working together, and you'll see what I was having to do because I didn't know how to do anything other than belly flying at the time. So I was having to bend almost like a banana.
I know. I remember.
And I had to do a lot of stretches to do that, to be able to spill the air. So whenever she floated, I applied my wings, and then whenever she sank, I was just folding like a banana. And that was how I did it. But it was really interesting to acknowledge that she came up with this, wanted to go with or without me. And thanks to her, I became a better flyer. And I learned how to sit fly, and I learned how to stand, and I learned how to do all kinds of things that I myself became part of the three-dimensional world as I try to keep up with it. So let's take a look at this real quick.
Let it rip.
It's just a short piece. Well, it's like all of them, and I might just kind of talk through some of it. And I also, what did I do? And I also may, there it is. So is it sharing now?
It is sharing.
All right, here we go. So this is the section after one of the other sections. This is in the middle of the film or towards the end of the film. Here we go. And this is Mike and Diana.
I love that. We used to do that all the time. It's been a while.
Yeah, it really was cool. The whole thing was just really cool.
I haven't seen anybody pop a T in ages.
Yeah, I know.
It's not that easy.
No, it's not.
It's like to attempt it is a commitment because there's no going back. Either you succeed or you fail, and you look like an idiot.
Yeah. And one of the things that was really difficult here was that they had different styles. So when they were trying to fly together, remember Mike had a gymnastic style and she didn't. So it was something they had to really learn to fly with each other and be in synchronization. This is more of Diana by herself.
Yeah. Yeah, very graceful, dancey. Oh, that cloud. That looks like Florida.
And she would just do a back loop and land it like that, you know, and it was really graceful. And I remember one of the things I was always impressed is like all of a sudden she would go from this, and then she would go from a sit, you know, and like all that stuff would backslide and do all kinds of stuff. And but then she would go from a sit to a you know, instead of the front like we saw there, she would actually put her foot and just keep pushing back on it, and she would all of a sudden end up on there's Mike doing a little more of the gymnastic style.
I love that.
Yeah.
Flip throughs, we used to call them.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody that does layouts the way he. I mean,
yeah. And then he would land that, you know, like right in the middle of it. And again, this was in a time when only belly flying was available, you know.
Yeah.
Or was discovered.
That was why it was such an eye opener, and it continues to be inspiring. I hope people continue to buy this.
Diana had not seen what the airplane was doing. It was not part of the plan. Only and it kind of went like between her legs almost there, and it was just like such a beautiful shot that was completely unplanned. You know, it wasn't a common thing back then. Now it's so common to see the airplanes go down like that, and back then it wasn't. We were still in DC-3 days, remember?
Yep. Yep.
And then we added. This year we wanted to. I wanted to finish the piece, you know, with a little bit more of a romantic thing. So we always paused a little bit, you know, and we have them do some close-ups and stuff like that.
I think it's beautiful to add some zen, add some stops, where there is this intimate moment where the only thing that's moving is the jumpsuit.
Yeah, and this actually, you know, like the sunset stuff was always so special, you know, and it was very romantic, you know, all of it.
Very warm. Yeah.
Here she is again. I love my little sky dancer.
Yeah, man. I get it. She felt it. She felt it.
But anyway, for you, everyone watching, Diana passed away in 1997. So the mother of freestyle lives only in my heart and in our hearts and in memories, and of course through the films that I did of her, thanks to being able to learn how to fly, to be able to keep up with the invention that she had just come up with to share with the world. There's a little bit of romantic there. That part right there was became a classic photo that I actually have here up on my wall in front of me. It's photo. It was just that moment, the touching of the foreheads and all that was just so special for me.
I love it. Oh, I love it. Let me take.
Yeah, so let me stop sharing the screen.
Yep. There you go. To merely say, Norman, that you do good work is a bit like standing in front of the Norwegian fjords. You know, it was I think it was Douglas Adams that said it makes you just want to stand up in spontaneous applause.
Thank you. One of the things I want to share, one other piece before we move on or stop or whatever.
If you're good, I'm good.
I'm good as long as everybody else is good. One of the things I wanted to first ask, see if there's some questions there.
There are a few, and some of them I think are good.
Hopefully some of them related to what we're talking about, but if you want to pop a couple of them and then we can move on to the next piece.
Well, yeah, there's one that Marcus Wolf always comes up with great questions, but one of them that he posed on the events page ahead of time, which I thought was great, is what was your most stressful job as a skydiving photographer? Why was it so stressful, and what did you do to handle that stress?
Yeah, I think it's almost the same question as far as level of difficulty when somebody says what was your most special one. You know, it's the same level of it because each one has its own different level of specialness and also of stress and fear, and because they're all unique that way. And I've always done stuff that's like kind of either never was done before, or it's always, you're always trying something that was demanding in one way or another. Anytime you're performing, it's especially for others when others are depending. Like for instance, for me, one of the things that stresses me out a lot is danger. We live in a dangerous environment as far as skydiving, but we learn how to really be comfortable with it, and also it's become so safe. The technology is so great, and we really, really are pretty safe. But so anytime it gets to a little more dangerous, I don't consider myself to be really a stunt man. It's more of, I live for the beauty that skydiving is, and not for the surviving, jumping out of an airplane. Therefore, anytime it gets a little bit on the dangerous side, it bothers me because it's not only stressful because I'm afraid, but also it's because it inhibits my creativity. And I've actually do a talk about the two, sort of dancing with the levels that it takes to become automatic at something. Kind of like when you drive first, you're all like all over the place, and you can't look at the rear mirror and at the road at the same time, and you're whoa, it's all wrong. Yeah. And then later on, you're not driving anymore. You're going to the store, you're going to work, you're going here, you're renting a car, whatever, but you're not driving. The driving becomes this thing that just happens on its own. Base frame, yeah. So skydiving has the same levels, and you become automatic at so many things in it. And so does photography and creativity. So when, and this is a talk that I give again, but that can take 30 minutes to do. And then when you start in those levels where you start going up and up and up in the automated, where there's a point where when both of those become automatic, you're sort of in the zone, and you're now, everything is just working itself out. Now, when you have a dangerous situation, you start dropping levels and start dropping to the survival level. Yep. And with any luck, with enough experience, you can drop there and keep the photography automatic, sort of, or maybe even shooting the danger. It becomes, and sometimes you actually have to drop the photography to, and what helps you, and this is the answer to your question, is how do you handle it? Is, and I'll give you some examples of some of those jumps. But how I handle it is by understanding this pyramid, this dance in the levels, and the fact that no matter how good you get and how automatic, you're not going to live there. It's just a visiting place.
Yeah.
Therefore, you may find yourself that you're not in the right shape for the jump, or you're tired, or you're worn out, or your automation becomes compromised in either one of the two. In this case, I'm talking about photography and or creativity and skydiving. So when you're aware of that, it's a lot easier to embrace the danger and work with it rather than turning it into panic because you don't recognize what it is. So it doesn't broadside you. The same as the danger in the door, and you go like, yeah, maybe I'm a little afraid for one reason or another, and you recognize and go, okay, this is performance anxiety, and yes, it's dangerous out there. We're doing 200 people trying on their heads and doing this wacky thing or whatever. Yeah, it's going to get a little dangerous. So, so you just, and then you just go, thank you for sharing, and you leave it behind, and you get out the door and go, and you don't think about it anymore, and hopefully it all works itself out. But you at least recognize it as it's here, it's coming, it's my friend, it's visiting, it's talking to me, and I'm going to acknowledge it and put it aside where it belongs. Or I'm going to do something about it, like not jump or whatever it is that you decide. But you acknowledge its existence rather than pretending it's not there. A lot of times people just go like, oh, I'm not scared. It's like, what's wrong with that? Be scared and embrace it and make it a part of the element, and you'll be surprised how quickly it dissolves. Yeah. Some of the examples was jumping. We were the first expedition to jump onto the North Pole before it became this vacation spot. On parachuting, and there was all this uncertainty of what the equipment would do under those temperatures, the lines freezing and becoming brittle and becoming stiff and not flexible, and things like that that were unknown, and it was just quite the a little bit of the, oh my God, what's going to happen, and is it going to work, is it not? And a lot of it is just in your head, and stuff, because you're not sure. But it really, that's one of the things that one of the areas, for instance. Things like that where you're not sure, you got to land in a place you've never seen before, or night jumps and things like that have a little added risk to them. That usually is the thing. But again, the technique for me is always embrace it, talk myself out of the danger and out of the panic. The crippling panic is what you don't want to do, because you may be self-induced into a situation that was dangerous, but you made it not manageable by being self-induced fear, which turns into panic. So sometimes it's just like, I'm totally afraid, but I've done this 1,000 times or however many thousands of times, and I'm going to be able to handle it. Just do the best you can, handle it, stay cool, and you talk yourself through this, and then you really realize that it's a conversation that's very useful in just saying, hey, you don't make it worse, just do the best you can. And if it all goes wrong, it's not like you're lying to yourself, pretending it's not happening. You're simply embracing that fear and trying to do the best you can with it. So that's how I handle those situations. And there's been many of those like that. My first base jump on a movie was for the movie Cliffhanger. That was not a base jumper. I'm not a base jumper. I was really jumping. I learned how to base jump so I could do these scenes. Yeah. And I was petrified, and I remember climbing down. It was hilarious. It's a long story, and I don't want to get too much into it, but I want to tell you at least that I was petrified. I was terrified, and we had to rappel down, and base jumpers are probably cracking up and going, "What a weenie," because I'm not really a base jumper, and it's not my thing. And but I have done a few base jumps, and that was one of them, and that was a really heavy setup also. And I remember there were so many things that scared me, like the parachute's got to open fast because I'm going to be really close to the ground, but I needed to not be fast because it's going to hurt me, And I remember Mark Hewitt, who was packing for me, because he was packing as a base jumper, and the parachute, the equipment and stuff was different. And I'm going like, well, he says, well, I'm going to pack you a really fast but very slow opening, or a very smooth opening. And I'm going like, you just lied to me.
How is that possible?
Yeah, I said, you just lied to me. He goes, no, really, trust me. I'm going, whatever. I know it's going to be, it's going to be hard. So, but anyway, I'm climbing down. This was a movie, if you guys ever seen it, it's a climbing movie. Mm-hmm. It's not, this happens to be a base jumping scenes on it, but it's really about climbing and stuff. A lot of climbing on it. So all these, the best climbers in the world are there to assist, and they're helping us get to the platform that they position in the face of the rock. This is in Italy, in Cortina, Italy. So we could jump. And I must have had this terrified look, because the guy looked at me, and this is Wolfgang Willich, which was the champion, the world champion in one kind of rock climbing. I don't know exactly the category. And he looked at me and says, hey, you don't have to do this, like if you're really super scared, don't do it. Like, it's not worth dying for this,
Yeah.
I remember looking at him going, I'm going to do this, but you got to let me be scared. If I got to look cool and then do it, he said, I can't do that. That's too much to handle. I got to be scared. You got to let me be scared. I'm petrified and I'm going to do it and I'm scared. But if I got to look like I'm not scared, I'm going to short.
That's going to be too much.
Exactly. So, and I remember they were cracking up. It was like, yeah, I mean, how else can you put it? Which is, hey, I'm not going to look cool right now. I'm climbing down and I'm petrified. I'll look cool once I leave and get the shot. Then it'll be my cool moment. Right now, I'm just, I'm not happy,
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that was happening and that it was sacrificing my creative juices. That's when I said, why? Either go do it right and get comfortable with it, so you can stay creative, because creativity is more important for me than even skydiving. If somebody ever asked me, hey, you're having too much fun, you can't have two passions, you got to choose one, I would choose photography. And I was a photographer first, and not because skydiving is second to anything, but it's just I can shoot anything, and skydiving just happens to be a huge challenge and beautiful, shoot. But I really skydive to shoot.
Yes,
that is why I skydive. And anytime I'm not jumping a camera, I always miss it, and I'm always thinking as a photographer, I always. Just like you saw in that little clip that I showed you, I'm already, I was doing a shot going, oh, if I could only have my other camera and all this stuff that was going through my mind, because that's what I live for. So therefore, if I had to choose one, that's how it would go. But luckily, we're in a world where you can have a lot of fun, and you don't have to be selective about how much fun and be regulated.
Yeah.
So, okay. Do we have another question, or
I love that. Well, I mean, I did want to, as you were talking, there was something I wanted to add to it.
Yeah.
Sort of a yes and, is that my research in psych, right, in studying what happens to us when we're afraid, same conclusion. When you look at the PET scans, right, positron emissions tomography and functional MRI, when somebody gets scared enough, we start losing prefrontal cortical activity, the front part of the brain where creativity comes from.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Behind that, right, the pineal gland, right, the dream center where we are creating our reality. It's a spiritual source within us. It starts shutting down. Maslow discovered the same thing in a different way, right? The top of Maslow's pyramid, self-actualization, the creator. It ceases to act. It ceases to be active when we're down here at the bottom of the pyramid, terrified. So address your fear, look it straight in the eye and go, what do you want from me? Do you want me to reduce my risk level? Do you want me to take some time off and sit down and clear myself? Or do you want me to not do this because my skill isn't there? The weather isn't there.
And I think that's when maybe a lot of times the fear, which inhibits that creativity, like we said earlier, can be self-induced. It's just because you're scared, because you're unfamiliar, or you scare easily, or whatever the case is. And it's not fear is automatically this level. It's a different level for each person.
Yeah.
So therefore, the way I handle that is to embrace it rather than to reject it. To actually go, it's here. It's I'm scared, and it's okay. And then handle that relationship with it rather than trying to pretend it's not there. Especially because who are you fooling? It's it's like it's you with you having a conversation with you, and the fear comes from within. So all the studies that you've done and all the writing that you've done about that comes into play into this question that he was asking. It's you have the scientific side of it also. I'm going more from just the experience, my self-experience, without really studying what the effects are, but there's a scientific explanation for it that just happens to match what happens to me and what happens to other people too in that area. So it explains why your creativity gets
It's true. Well, I mean, the pursuit of expertise is the pursuit of truth. And you're going to come up with truth in anything you do. And Norman, you have really pushed the outer boundary of something that has brought to light so much. And we're a little bit short on time now. I think it's probably a perfect place to end this particular live cast, and after that we can have a more open conversation with all the viewers that are still here, and others.
Mm-hmm.
Are welcome to join us on the Zoom that's on my.
Well, what I suggest, if you don't mind, is if I can just finish the part from Wingskin Flight that I wanted to show you. It's only a couple of minutes long.
Do it.
Can we do that, or do we have to go to?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And the reason is because that kind of helps us finish that topic a little bit. Although we could always come back to From Wingskin Flight. And what I wanted to show you.
Go ahead.
Is this particular piece was also on freestyle, but it was a piece where I kind of how we ended the film. And what it was is, I had felt so privileged to be with Diana as far as not only as a partner, but also in what she opened my eyes to on this three-dimensional skydiving and all of that. And again, we were talking earlier, this piece here will show you her and I working together. And this piece, what happened is she didn't know we were doing that. There was behind the scenes pictures being taken all the time. Actually, Tom Sanders worked with us on some of this. And there was behind the scenes of film being shot of us, but she didn't know how we were going to use it. And what I wanted to do is acknowledge her and thank her for everything she did. So I created this romantic piece called Picture Me. And that's what I wanted to share with you, because it's not only that her freestyle alone without Mike, but it also shows her and I working together. And it started kind of how we finished the film. So
Great.
Here we go. And now let's share screen and let's see what we got here.
There's 1,000 words written deep in my eyes when I feel the touch of your gentle hand. With the roar of the wind.
You can see my feet above my head there.
Yeah, totally. Pretzel.
For the song that it sings, that's an ecstasy ring through my body, as endless as time. In your smile I see it's just the way it should be, as I picture you and you picture me, closing in on your heart. Heaven only knows what you see. Picture me here playing my part, darling, never let me be. never let me be. When I stand all alone with my feet on the ground, waiting for that image to see, I turn my eyes to the sky, let my mortal soul fly, and I picture you as you picture me.
Wow.
And it's one of the things that's funny that I wanted to, that I wanted to mention is the painting at the beginning. You remember seeing that painting as she's getting ready?
Mm-hmm.
There's a story behind that, which is, you got to remember this is 30 years ago too, you know, but when we were in Illinois, Diana and I, and she was kind of getting back into skydiving. My son Ramsey was 2 years old, so this was in 1984, and this is where she started playing with this. But before she even started with this, the idea of it, she bought a new rig. We were staying over there at Sandwich, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this guy that was just like some artist, but you know, he seemed like he was just living in the airplane and in this fuselage of an airplane, and his name was David Rickerby.
Oh, wow.
The famous David Rickerby.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him, and Diana, we just met him and stuff. And Diana comes to me and says, just like the other story where I'm going like, no, you can't do that. Diana comes to me and says, hey, you know, this brand new rig, right? So this guy here lives in the fuselage. He's so cool and this and that and whatever. And he's going to make a painting on my reserve flap. And I'm going, hell no, not on your new rig. Brand new rig, you're not going to ruin your rig like that. He says, I want my picture, whatever, you know. And so he visualized her flying and dancing in the air before even she did. So this was his vision was there before she ever did it. Later on, we reproduced that in painting in the form of a photo. Look, we actually reproduced the pose and everything. Yeah, and it was really unique because you know, it was just a premonition that he had, and she ended up being this person, and she had this thing on her head and whatever, and that's why we portrayed her like this here. So that was sort of my romantic way to thank her and all that, and yeah. Anyway, I thought we should share that with everyone.
I agree.
Because it was a big part of From Wings to Flight.
Yeah.
How we ended. So anyway, we have a lot of stuff that we wanted to cover that we never got to, and I'm sure a lot of questions that we didn't even glance through, and I'm really sorry that we didn't cover all of it, but it just I think, you know, I just talk a lot, don't I?
Yeah. Well, we do as much as we can with the time that we have. We went about a half an hour longer than I expected, but that's okay, because of course we can get you back and fill in the other stuff. But I think we did a great job of bringing out a couple of the stories that are so inspiring, that hopefully will light the fire in lots of different people, for the artist, the photographer within them, to capture this beautiful experience of flying around in the sky and other stuff, right? Because many of the viewers aren't even jumpers. They do other things. They're other adventure folk. Capture it, make it timeless, you know. And Norman, you've done such a wonderful service and continue to offer so much beauty to all of us, and I thank you so deeply for what you continue to do. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to not only share some of the stories and some of the emotions and some of these thoughts, and like you were saying, one of the angles that I come from as far as my photography is, you know, we are like translators of the sport. You know, it's through photography aid, that photography equipment, that you can see our sport, you know, and share the sport with others. So it's really, you know, I hope that it inspires others to be creative and not just be GoPro information, you know, but really more to take on interpretation of our sport that has to do with more beauty and stuff. You've seen tonight mostly my old stuff, you know, so I hope that someday we have an opportunity to show you more of my modern, more quality. I mean, the quality there was so like, oh my God, look at the, you know, that used to be considered high quality, and it looks like so low quality, but it's more of the historic value that I wanted to share with you and all of that.
I would not say it is low quality. I would say it is low resolution.
Yeah, low resolution.
It's extremely high quality.
I agree. And so you really want to thank, I don't know who's watching and how many, but anybody who's there, please, just thank you very much, and please share whatever you learned here. And thank you, Brian, for the opportunity. Man.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you. I look forward to the next time, and I'm very thankful for this time. Thank you.
In a silver car with a borrowed guitar, ready to travel so far.